Is this on your page?
No, it's on local businesses, community organizations, and senior healthcare providers.
Gotcha.
Welcome, 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 everyone. I see we have some viewers.
Hey.
Good evening. All right. We're going to get started. So good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome, everyone from local businesses, community organizations, and healthcare providers. Tonight, we are going live, myself and Miss Olivia Smith. If you don't know, I am the founder of this group, and this group is to bring education locally to our Facebook members, and also, if you're in Atlanta, Georgia, or if you're in Douglas County, West Georgia, Douglas County, Paulding County, Atlanta, Coweta County, here in Georgia, we are service providers to the senior care industry. And we also partner with other local businesses and community organizations, because a lot of times those business owners have a family member or need that education regarding their elderly parents. It could be a grandparent, or it could just be a friend. So I was talking to one of my business colleagues, and she reached out to me, and she's also in the senior industry, and she's a community liaison. And she said, Rebekah, we need to go live. And I said, okay, let's go live, because we need to help our families prepare for 2023. Right?
Absolutely.
So it's better to prepare, and we're going to talk a little bit about preparing for your elderly parents, even for yourself, right? Yeah. As you're becoming a senior, as they would call it. Yes. And preparing for yourself when it comes to your legal documents, in case of, something happened to you physically, right? Or even mentally. So I call this Let's Talk Senior Care. And tonight we're going to discuss the different types of power of attorneys, okay? So let me introduce myself as what I do. I'm a local senior living specialist, and I help families who are overwhelmed, burnt out, families who have loved ones that they're taking care of loved ones. They're overwhelmed. They're burnt out. They might be a long distance. They have an elderly parent, again, grandparent, or a friend that can no longer live alone in the home anymore. They become a fall risk, or they have some type of chronic illness such as dementia. They're needing assistance with their medications, and the house is too big, and they're needing to downsize. So I help families by guiding them and advising them through that process of connecting to senior living communities, talking about, what let's discuss where they're at right now. What's their current situation? What's their level of care? What's those financials? Have they planned, right? We talk about, geographical preferences. A lot of times loved ones want to be close. Is that your preference? Is that what you want? You want to be close to mom and dad so you can visit them. So we go into all of that, and then I guide you through that process. So that's what I do. And I have Miss Olivia here tonight. She is one of my business colleagues, and I refer a lot of families to her because she's a wealth of knowledge. She has experience personally, with her family, and she's gone through this herself. So we're not just talking tonight. We're sharing our expertise and our experiences personally in our lives. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about power of attorney. Okay. I'm gonna share a quick story because I like to share stories so that you have something to relate to. So actually today I was talking with one of my clients who is in the process of transitioning her uncle here to Georgia from Florida. Yeah. And he's having some health issues, and he's having some falls, and he's been in and out of the hospital. And she's currently taking care of her mom here, but she wants to transition her uncle here because he has no family in Florida. And I'm helping her through that process. And while I was talking to her, I said, well, I think it's time that we get some legal documents in place. Who's going to handle his finances? Who are you going to be able to, make those healthcare decisions for him? If he's in and out of the hospital a lot, he's declining, and he might get to a point where he cannot handle his finances. You might need to go to the bank for him, or you might need to pay for his monthly rent and things like that. So let me give you a resource and introduce you to my elder law attorney so that she can discuss those things with you, so you could have that in place. So Olivia, I shared that story, but I didn't let you introduce yourself. So go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll get into power of attorneys.
Okay, so my name's Olivia Smith. I am owner and partner, I guess I should say co-owner and partner of SR Law Group. We are an estate planning, elder law, and probate firm. Our office is in Douglasville, but we really wind up representing clients all over the place. We really enjoy representing clients that are 60 and over. Obviously, we have clients that are younger than that, but that seems to really be our sweet spot because that demographic of clients, they have needs that are different from clients that we may have that are younger. So we really enjoy working with and representing older clients.
Most definitely, most definitely. So tell me a little bit about, when is it time to start preparing for these documents? As you said, your age, your demographics is primarily seniors, 60 and above. Yeah. But so I guess, is that the age bracket when they should start preparing?
No. So I will say you would be surprised the number of calls we get for people needing to do some planning, and it's too late, right? They've waited too late to do planning for mom or grandma, and they don't have the capacity to be able to say what they want. And so really, every adult should have these documents. Your goals may change, your needs may change over time as you age, but none of us know what's going to happen in our life. Like, nobody leaves the house expecting to get in a car accident until you're in a car accident, and then you're at the hospital and you don't have any of these documents. So, honestly, if you are an adult person, you should have a healthcare directive, a power of attorney, at the very least.
Yes, most definitely. I agree with that. So tell me a little bit about those two documents. What
Yeah.
is the difference? What is a power of attorney and what is a healthcare power of attorney?
Okay. So for the power of attorney really dictates who is going to handle your financial business when and if you cannot handle it for yourself. So the first thing you're doing is naming your agent. Who is your agent and who is going to be the backup agent? If you get into a situation where you can't pay your mortgage, access your bank account. You are still here, but maybe you're incapacitated. And you need someone that's going to step in and handle your financial business on your behalf. I tell my clients all the time, your plan is only as good as the people that you choose. And so part of the work we do with our clients is really understanding who they have selected and why they have selected them. A lot of times clients come in and they think, "Oh, this is my oldest child. This is the person I have to pick. This is who I'm supposed to pick." And so we then ask them a series of questions. And, if your oldest child isn't good with money, if they've had several bankruptcies, if they're asking you for money all the time, perhaps this is not going to be the best person to be your agent. And so, part of the assistance we provide is really just helping people think through who makes the most sense, who's going to be the best steward of that responsibility, and who is going to carry out that job as if it were you carrying it out. And so that's kind of the first hurdle when we're talking about powers of attorney. Who is going to be in that role? And then the other part is, do they want that role? You would be surprised how many people are selected as powers of attorney and they have no idea that they have been selected as someone's agent. You want to make sure the person you're selecting is going to accept the role that you have put them in, because if they don't accept the role, it's just like you didn't do any planning. And so choosing the right person is really a key part of the power of attorney. And then the next part is how much power you're going to give them. And so really in the Georgia statutory power of attorney, there's really two levels of power. There's the general powers that you give, and that's really the first level. And then there is a heightened level of powers that they would not automatically have unless you give them those powers. A lot of people are nervous about giving that second level of power just because sometimes it would allow your agent to change or undo something you may have already done. And so that sometimes makes people a little nervous. But then, I always go back to who have you selected? It should be someone that you unequivocally have no concern with whether they're going to do the right thing and whether they're going to represent your interests. So that's really the financial power of attorney. Then there's the healthcare power of attorney, or the advanced directive for healthcare. And that does for your health the same thing that the power of attorney really does for your finances. So for your advanced directive, once again, you have to choose who is that agent going to be. And that may the qualities that that agent would need are going to be different from the qualities, for instance, your power of attorney agent would need. When we're looking at your healthcare agent, we want to know who is good under pressure, who can make decisions and not let their emotions get the best of them, who, when we're talking about life and death and carrying out your wishes, who is going to not let how much they love you or their relationship cloud what you've asked them to do? And so sometimes that isn't the closest person to you, because the closest people to you are going to be overly emotional and they're not going to be able to make those decisions. Sometimes that may be a church member, or a neighbor or a friend that has that awesome responsibility, because you know they're going to have a clear head and they're going to be able to make good decisions. So that's the first thing, part one really of the advanced healthcare directive. Who's going to be the agent? Who's going to be the backup agent? Then we get into treatment preferences. And I often tell my clients the treatment preferences part is really the gift you give to the agent. I've been in hospital rooms where those decisions about what to do have been made, and it's never an easy decision, but it is made a little easier when you don't have to wonder what that person wanted, because they've outlined what they wanted. And so it's not an easy position to be in, but it's made a little better when you can say, you know what, I'm just honoring the wishes. They've laid out what they wanted, and it's tough, but I know that I'm at least doing what they ask. I'm honoring their wishes. And so the treatment preferences for the advanced directive really lay out two of the most common conditions that someone may find themselves in, not the only condition, because there are thousands of different conditions somebody may find themselves in, but two of the most common is being terminal and permanent unconsciousness. And so, in those very common situations, you can say, this is what I would want to happen. If we get to the place where the doctor says, okay, there's really nothing else we can do, what do you want to do? You can lay out, okay, it gives you options. And so you're able to say, this is my preference. It also has another section that says additional details or statements, and so that gives you the opportunity to say anything else that is important to you that may not be in the document. And for instance, I've had Jehovah Witness clients that say, you know, they put in that section, under no circumstances do I want a blood transfusion. Or Muslim clients that have very specific guidelines about burial and what to happen after, what needs to happen after death. I've had clients talk about medicines they're allergic to, or what medicines they're taking, or some that have been had very strong feelings about amputation. So it really gives you the flexibility to put anything else that is really important to you in that section, to make sure that your agent is aware of it and also the medical professional is aware of it as well. And then the third section is really guardianship. It's an optional section, but it allows you to say, if someone ever needed to go to probate court and file for guardianship for me, at that time, I would may not have capacity to say what I want. And so I'm saying it now. If I ever needed a guardian, this is the person that I would want to be my guardian. And so those are the three main parts. And then the fourth part is just the signature and when it becomes effective. And so they function in kind of the same way in different areas. They're known as life documents. Their authority lies while you are still living and maybe incapacitated. But the financial power of attorney, it really dictates who's going to handle your finances. And the healthcare power of attorney or advanced directive for healthcare really dictates who is going to be the spokesperson over your health and um, your medical business. And so those are kind of that is a very long explanation.
No, it was excellent, excellent, very detailed. We need that information. So let me ask you a question. With the guardianship, would that reference back to the situation such as being able to place someone in senior living? Would that guardianship allow you to do that?
So it would, but if they have done an advanced directive for healthcare, it also gives you the power to do that.
Oh, so that gives you, okay.
Yes. And
Okay.
I pulled out mine
Mhm.
because I always like to look at the documents. It specifically lists that in there as something, admit me to or discharge me from any hospital, skilled nursing facility, hospice, or other healthcare facility or service.
Okay.
So the advanced directive for healthcare gives you the power. The difference is whether they have capacity to do the advanced directive for healthcare or whether it's been too late and now we have to go to guardianship.
Okay. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So let me ask you, what does that process look like from beginning to end when it comes to putting those documents in place?
It's not a difficult or a long process. It really, we can go as fast as the client is ready. And so oftentimes when you're making these decisions, sometimes these decisions are more are scarier and take more time than the decisions you make when you're doing a will. Because at the end of the day, the clients are like, I'm gonna be dead. Like when that will goes into effect, I am not going to be here. And so in some instances, that makes them feel better about it.
Mm-hmm.
These are why you're still here.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes that requires them to really think through that and to think through the people in their life and who's going to hold what role. But a couple of weeks, honestly. We can have these done for you in a couple of weeks if you are motivated. You kind of know, you come in knowing, these are the people, we talk through them, and you're ready to go. In a couple of weeks, from beginning to end, we can have these done, and you sign, and then you have them.
Good, good. Because a lot of times families, well, individuals, excuse me, would say, well, why do I need an elder law attorney for this? I can do this on my own. So why would you recommend that you have an elder law attorney help you through this process?
So I tell, I do presentations all the time. And what I tell them is you don't pay me for the documents, right? You can get these documents online. You can get them at LegalZoom. You can. You pay me for the counsel. You pay me because I'm going to ask questions and have you consider different scenarios that perhaps you would not think of because of the experience that I have, because of working with other families and seeing how these affected other families and things that happen, that you may not have considered. And so oftentimes it's the counsel that you're paying for, not the documents, because the documents are only as good as the people you put in place and the counsel you've had when you were drafting them.
Mm-hmm. And how often should they look at those documents? Yearly, every 6 months, every 3 years?
So I would say dust them off, because sometimes we draft them and we put them away on the top shelf in the closet and they sit there for years. Dust them off yearly and look at them. Remind yourself, now who did I put as my as my agent? Have I divorced that person? Do I still want that person as my agent? Has that person predeceased me? Like, do I need to have someone else? And so as things happen in your life, as you get married or divorced, as you have children, as children, reach the age of majority, as people that are close to you pass away or move away, or as your relationships change, you want to check in to make sure, okay, who did I put in these positions? And are those still the people that I would want serving in those capacities now?
Hmm. What happens when they wait? What happens when for let me give you another scenario.
Okay.
So I have a client,
Hmm.
mother, daughter and son, who are wanting to transition mom into assisted living.
Okay.
Mom has some um dementia, but she's still competent to make her decisions to say, no, I'm not giving you power of attorney. Children are stressed out, burnt out, overwhelmed, stressed out because mom is not safe at home. She doesn't answer the phone. She's unplugging things. They have that old mindset. Unplug when there's a storm. You unplug everything, or you unplug this at night to save energy, right?
I'm
So,
familiar.
you know, when they need to contact her, they cannot contact her. No use of putting cameras up in the house because she unplugs them, right? Um, and she's been having some issues. She's been in and out. She's been in and out of the hospital maybe 2 times. Went into rehab. She is a fall risk. So it's time for assisted living. But mom don't want to give up that power of attorney.
Mom
I
said.
need you to help me, Olivia. How do we help this family? How do we help?
So listen now, and I will tell you, I've had friends call people that know me, and they're like, "Look, like, what do I do? My parents are difficult. Like, they don't want to give me information. They don't want to help. It makes it more difficult when they still have capacity, right? Because they get to decide what they want to happen to themselves. And so if they are not ready, then that puts you in a bind. And oftentimes it really is, as you age, coming to terms with that you are aging and
Yeah.
that you are at a different place in your life, and that oftentimes is not easy for our parents and grandparents. They've been the ones that have taken care of us, right, our whole lives, and now um, the roles are reversing, and they have to be okay with us taking care of them. And oftentimes that is a really tough pill to swallow. And so I always say that you have to enter it in grace. Like, you have to extend a lot of grace to your parents and your grandparents and the other aging people in your life, because this is not an easy position to be in. I would also say that at this point, if the daughter and son don't live in Georgia, like if they don't live around the corner where they can just go check, it is really important to have a community of people around your aging loved ones for these specific situations. When, okay, mom is not being agreeable, but she is has full capacity, so it's not like we can just take the reins and do what we want. But are there people that I call the neighbor and say, "Hey, can you go over and check on mom? Do I know who she goes to church with?" It's really important for you to start forming relationships, not just with your aging parents and checking in with them, but with the people that are around them that are going to be sometimes your eyes and ears when you can't, and help you. And oftentimes they may have more sway with your parent and loved one than you do. You
Mhm.
know, you may be able to put a call in to the pastor and say, "Look, this is what we're dealing with." And a conversation with pastor, such and such may have more weight with your mom than you talking to them. And so sometimes it becomes some strategizing that needs to take place for their benefit, of course. But
Mhm.
who are the people that your parents, grandparents, or loved ones listen to? Who has sway with them? And
Mhm.
those may be people that you have to reach out to and say, I need some help.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
as a child, that's not easy, having to reach out and say you need help with your parent or grandparent. But the goal is to make sure that they're taken care of. And so sometimes we have to go around to get that done instead of going straight through.
Mhm. So, say we've done all of that. What's the next step?
Prayer.
Um,
I don't.
what would be the next step if to make sure that they're in a safe environment, and if they have some form or type of dementia,
Right.
if they've been diagnosed with some type of dementia, and you can see that they are not making sound decisions due to that dementia, what would be the next step? How can a family member, um, yeah, like what would be that next step?
So that's a different scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So, and dementia shows up in different ways than we are just used to seeing. Like, we're used to seeing, oh, people are forgetting. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes personality change
Mm-hmm.
is a big clue that, okay, something is going on here. And so if you feel like, my parent has dementia and something's going on, you may want to take them to the doctor to see if it is progressing. And if it is progressing and they are not able to make decisions for themselves, they're putting themselves in harm's way, either because they can't take care of themselves or maybe they can't take care of their finances, then guardianship would be something that you should consider. It's not a nice process. And so I want to say that I want to say that up front. Oftentimes it's a necessary process. We do guardianships at our firm. We do guardianships for a lot of parents and grandparents that have dementia or Alzheimer's. Um, but it requires you to go to court, and it requires you to say unkind things about someone you love, because you have to prove to the judge that this person does not have capacity to make decisions for themselves. And if guardianship is granted, then you step into that person's shoes and you make decisions on their behalf. And so it takes your mom, whether your mom or dad, what they want, and them making decisions, it kind of takes the decisions away from them. And the judge has made a decision that you are going to be the one to determine what they need and what is in their best interest. And so you take on that role for you're responsible for their care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because I've seen that a lot, Olivia. And even I've seen family members go to court and their parent was diagnosed with dementia. Um, but they still do not give them guardianship, or that, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, because from the court's perspective, we don't want to strip people of their rights unless that is the last resort. And so the court really is looking for the least restrictive remedy. Guardianship is the most restrictive remedy. Is there something else that can be done short of that that can solve the problem? Is really what they're looking at. And sometimes there just isn't. But sometimes there is. And so the court is always looking to what is the least restrictive remedy to make sure this person is cared for. But they do not take it lightly to strip someone of their rights. And oftentimes, once a guardianship, someone has been appointed as guardian, you may not be able to vote, you may not be able to drive. So it is something that the court really takes seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for us, a lot of times people call and want a guardianship, and after we hear the facts, we're just like, I feel for you and I understand why you want it, but I don't think the court's going to grant you a guardianship.
So let's talk about that. I want to get into this because this happens a lot, Olivia.
I know.
So let's talk about this. What are some of those facts that make you say, hold up, no, I don't think you're going to be able to get guardianship? And what is the extreme? Like, how extreme does it have to be for a judge to say, mom and dad, is no longer safe in the home, and yes, you have guardianship to make these decisions for them because they're no longer able to make those decisions for themselves, because you have different types of dementia. You have mild dementia, moderate and severe, right? You have Alzheimer's, you have vascular, Lewy body, and different things like that. And dementia is on the rise, and that I'm seeing a lot of that now, and I'm seeing how difficult it's for families to get their parents to cooperate in transition when they're needing to, because they are not able to cook their meals, they are not able to take their medications. And then the family dynamics as well. You might have one family member here that wants to, make that decision, move forward with getting guardianship, but then the other family member, or the son, say it's a daughter and a son, but then the son is like, no, let's try to do in-home care first, right? And then after a week or two, they realize in-home care isn't working because they need someone there more than just 4 hours a day. They need somebody there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They need somebody to give them meds at breakfast, at lunch, and dinner. They need somebody to remind them to go take a shower. But when mom and dad goes in the courtroom, they are, very competent and have and answer all the right questions and say everything perfect. And then, the judge is like, well, let's try this, let's try that before we give you guardianship. Let's talk about that, Olivia.
So I will tell you the number one client, and we get quite a few calls about this that I'm leery about, are mental health. People that call because their wife or their child is having mental health issues. um that is one that I am leery about because I've seen the court not grant guardianship for that.
Mhm.
um b- and it is a situation where, yeah, if they take their meds, they're fine, which is different from guardianship. I mean, which is different from Alzheimer's or autism or something like that, where, there is no drug that is going to help with that. So, those are ones I'm always really leery about. I'm also really hesitant about ones where, because just because there's been a diagnosis, that doesn't automatically mean that they are incapable of making decisions for themselves. Doesn't automatically mean that you're going to get guardianship just because they have um, Alzheimer's or dementia. There are different stages. And so they may be in the early or moderate stage and they may be fine. They still may be able to function on their own. And so, just saying they have dementia or Alzheimer's is not enough on its own.
Mhm.
I'm also really hesitant when people call because they don't agree with the decisions that the person is making, but the decisions that the person is making does not put their safety at risk. It certainly might not be a decision that I would make, or that a loved one would make, but it doesn't rise to the level where it is putting them at risk of some of their safety or someone else's safety at risk. And so those are all difficult ones because oftentimes there is some behavior that is questionable, but that's oftentimes not enough. And the judge is probably going to say, try this, or if there is something else to try, because you have to remember, we're always going back to what is the least restrictive remedy. So if someone comes in and says, like home health care, like we're going to do that, the judge may say, okay, let's see, will home health care solve it? Because that comes short of me giving full guardianship and you fully taking over for this person. So if we can find something that is less intrusive that solves the problem, that's what we want to do. You also have to remember, and this is why I will tell a potential client, no, because they'll say, well, let's just try. If you try and the court finds that they don't need a guardianship, it's a 2-year bar from you trying again.
Oh, wow.
So you want to be relatively sure
Mhm.
that you're going to get one granted, or you want to have really good facts where you're like, okay, they may grant it, they may not, but this is a dire situation. And so we're going to just have to see what the judge says. So, those are ones that I'm more hesitant about. And that's why the judge may say, okay, let's see if we can do something else before we go all the way to the max and do a guardianship. But keep in mind, this isn't something that you can, if this doesn't work this year, we can try again next year. No, you're going to have to wait 2 years. And there's a lot that can happen in 2 years. So
Mhm.
sometimes I say, okay, let's wait and see. Can you get them back into the neurologist? Let's have another test. Let's see if their dementia or their Alzheimer's has progressed, because
Mhm.
then we go into court with better evidence as to why a guardianship should be granted than them saying, they're starting to act funny. Like, you know, the people that see you on the day-to-day basis and love you, they are always great witnesses because they can see the change. But if we can also get some sort of doctor to say, okay, they started here, this was the baseline, and now they're here, so it is obviously progressing, then we know we have an even better case.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. I want to ask you this about conservatorship.
Yep.
So we talked about the uh, financial. a power of attorney.
Yeah.
Conservatorship handles finances as well. So, like, what's the difference in what's the difference between financial power of attorney and conservatorship?
So conservatorship is to power of attorney what guardianship is to advance directive for healthcare. So for a conservatorship, you would have to file with probate court and say this person cannot handle their finances. They do not have the capacity to handle their finances, and I need to be granted the authority to step in and make all of the financial decisions for this person.
So,
And,
so rather than them giving you that financial authority, you're going to the court to take that financial authority.
yep, same thing. Oftentimes, if we're filing for guardianship, we're filing for both. We're filing for guardianship and conservatorship uh,
Mhm.
at the same time, usually. Because if they can't maintain themselves and keep themselves safe, chances are they also aren't able to maintain their financials either. And so, most of the times, we're asking the court to grant whoever the petitioner is. We're asking them to grant both of those powers to that person.
Okay.
Now, with conservatorship, though, so if you give someone power of attorney, there are no requirements, right?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. And I have the sheet, and that's it. When you ask the court, though, to grant you conservatorship, there are other requirements. And they are going to require you to post a bond
Mhm.
because they want to be sure that if you are over this person's financial business, if you're in their bank accounts, if you are over their property, if you can, have access to their stocks and bonds, if you run off with their stuff, that there is some sort of remedy for that person to be made whole. And so oftentimes to become a conservator, you are required to post a bond based on the value of the assets that person has.
So,
That is something to keep in mind.
yeah.
That's a big difference.
Yes, it is a very big difference. A very big difference. One last thing I want to talk about before we go
Okay.
is living wills. So we were discussing that before we got onto the line, before we got on, before we came on live,
Yes.
and I was not aware of this. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about living wills.
So living will is not a thing in Georgia anymore. It kind of rolled into the Georgia Advanced Directive for Healthcare. And so the Georgia Advanced Directive for Healthcare handles that plus appointing of your agent. I think some people get mixed up and they think living will is the will, and living will was something separate from the will, when you were doing your estate planning about who gets what when I pass. But so living will in Georgia is not the law anymore, but the healthcare directive takes what was a living will before and rolls it in with the other parts that are in that one document.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you, Olivia.
You're
Again, a wealth of knowledge. Thank you for sharing and coming and explaining in great detail the differences between power of attorneys, living wills, helping us through some of these scenarios that family members have to go through
absolutely.
when it comes to making decisions for their loved ones. So glad to have you once again.
Me.
Always a pleasure to speak with you and have you here live with us. We'll be here tomorrow night. Let's talk senior care tomorrow night. We will be here with Miss Tracy Guilford, who's a community director, and she's a wealth of knowledge as well. And we're going to go more into those scenarios with different scenarios with family caregivers and their parents, and how to give them grace, how to
Yes.
talk to them.
Yes, that's
um,
important.
you got to remember that, again, like what Olivia said, roles have changed. You're the parent and now they're the children, and it's really hard for them to accept that sometimes.
Absolutely, it
So
is.
you have to do it with grace and with a lot of patience, and take your
Lots of
emotions,
patience.
lots of patience, and take your emotions out of it, like Olivia said. you have to take your emotions out of it,
Yeah.
especially again, I always go back to dementia. A dementia parent is, accusing you or something,
Yes.
or saying things that's not true. That's not towards you.
Right.
That's the disease. So you always got to keep those things in mind. So thank you again. See you
You're
all
welcome.
tomorrow. Thank you again, Olivia. See you all tomorrow at 7:30 here in our local businesses, community organizations, and healthcare providers group. You all have a blessed night. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. And me and Olivia will answer any questions you may have. Olivia is part of the group as well. So, and how can they find you on social media, and how can they
Yeah.
contact you?
So our office number is 404-410-6505. Our website is srlawgrp.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on TikTok. We're on LinkedIn. And all of those you can find is SR Law Group or Olivia Smith. On TikTok, it's me. It's not the firm. But yeah, you can find us on all social media, and we share. Education is our thing, so we're always sharing information and videos. And so if you want to learn more about a topic, check out our social media. You may there may be a video or something like that that will help you.
Yes, most definitely. All right. You all have a blessed evening. Thank you, Olivia. Mwah. Good night.
Bye.